Before we talk about numbers, strategies, or plans, take one slow breath and notice your body. Notice how your chest lifts and falls. Notice the tension in your shoulders, the way your jaw wants to hold the day together by itself, the way the mind keeps scanning for the next bill, the next due date, the next small fire to put out. You are not alone in this. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are human, and your nervous system has been working overtime to keep you safe. Under pressure, the brain prefers the quick relief that promises to stop the discomfort now. Under pressure, the prefrontal cortex, the part that plans, governs, and sees the long road, goes quiet, while the survival centers speak louder. That is not failure. That is biology. And tonight we will welcome that truth while gently teaching your mind and heart a different rhythm. If your finances were a city, would its walls keep wisdom in and waste out, or would the gates swing open to every impulse dressed as comfort, every offer dressed as urgency, every promise dressed as rescue? Sit with that image for a moment, not to accuse, to awaken. A city with broken walls is not cursed, it is unprotected. It does not need shame. It needs rebuilding, stone by stone, boundary by boundary, decision by decision. Wisdom does not arrive as thunder. It arrives as a mason with patient hands. It arrives as a governor who walks the perimeter each evening and asks, "Where are the cracks?" It arrives as a gentle but firm friend who says, "Let us strengthen what keeps the good in and the waste out." I see the nights when the room goes quiet, but your thoughts grow loud. I see the math you do in your head while making coffee, the bargain you make in the grocery aisle, the breath you hold when opening the banking app, the mix of dread and determination right before payday. I see the tired hope that whispers, "Maybe the next thing will fix it," and the tired fear that whispers back, "Maybe nothing will." Hear me with tenderness. You are not behind because you lack worth. You are behind because modern life chips away at the walls while telling you to smile. Algorithms play on the brain's craving for novelty and relief. Advertisements coat urgency with belonging. Stress narrows attention until only the nearest exit seems visible. When you feel that pull, it is your body trying to keep you safe, not your soul trying to self-sabotage. We will honor that signal and guide it toward wisdom. Now, let Solomon sit with us, not as a distant figure on a pedestal, but as a mentor at your kitchen table, sleeves rolled, eyes steady. His wisdom is not superstition, not magic, not a talisman to wave at problems. It is practical spirituality, governance of desire, stewardship of time, generosity with purpose, diligence without hurry. His sayings move like water over stone, shaping character first and outcomes next. He does not shame the struggler, he trains the struggler. He does not glamorize speed, he praises steadiness. He does not idolize wealth, he honors wisdom that can hold wealth without being held by it. Tonight we will walk in that spirit because wisdom is not a lecture. Wisdom is a way. What would Solomon do in your place in this economy with your challenges, your inbox, your temptations, your talents? He would begin where all wise rebuilding begins, at the gates. He would ask which desires lead and which principles govern. He would trade hurry for diligence, spectacle for substance, noise for craft. He would look at your work not as punishment but as land, soil that can be cultivated, seeded, watered, and slowly made fruitful. He would insist on margin because freedom needs room to breathe. He would bring counsel around your table because storms are best navigated with a compass, a map, and a crew. He would not promise you a miracle. He would promise you a path, and he would walk that path with you, step by steady step. While we travel, you will notice a rhythm. We will return to images on purpose. We will return to phrases on purpose. Repetition is not manipulation, it is rehabilitation. The brain learns by cadence, by echoes that begin to feel familiar, by words that become handles you can grab when the day is slippery. When you hear the words walls and gates, remember boundaries that protect your peace. When you hear the word ant, remember the small, steady actions that build stores without applause. When you hear land, remember your skill, your usefulness, your craft. Not more hours for the sake of hours, but more value grown with care. When you hear margin, remember oxygen for the soul and the plan. When you hear counsel, remember that wisdom multiplies in good company. Let me be clear and kind. This is not a promise of sudden wealth. This is not a new scheme, a brighter trap, a louder ad. This is a patient return to what makes prosperity possible and sustainable. This is dignity restored to the process. You will not be pushed. You will be guided. You will not be judged. You will be invited. And yet the truth will be firm, because compassion without clarity keeps you where you are, and clarity without compassion breaks what it tries to build. Here we will hold both. We will hold you with gentleness, and we will hold the line with strength. As you listen, keep a simple notebook near you, or open a blank page on your phone. Not for perfect notes, not for beautiful journaling, but for one line you will carry from each section. One line that you can turn into one action. Your nervous system will thank you for a plan you can touch. Your mind will thank you for a next step that fits in the next 24 hours. We will move slowly enough for the heart to catch up with the head, and we will move steadily enough for momentum to begin. Slow is not failure. Slow is how foundations set. Steady is not boring. Steady is how orchards grow. So here is our quiet contract for this hour. You bring honest attention and a willing spirit. I bring clear images, practical steps, and the older wisdom that has steadied travelers long before us. Together, we will walk through 5 doors. The hidden pattern that leaks your strength, the speed that burns your gains, the craft that raises your value, the margin that restores your freedom, and the counsel that strengthens your decisions. At each door, you will hear a question that invites reflection rather than guilt, courage rather than shame, movement rather than noise. At the end, you will leave with a simple practice that you can begin tonight, not to impress anyone, but to train your heart and hands to work together. Before we step forward, return to the city. Walk its perimeter in your mind. See the places that are strong. See the places that are cracked. See the gate that needs a hinge, the wall that needs a stone, the watchman who needs a lantern. You do not rebuild a city by shouting at it. You rebuild a city by lighting a lamp and laying a first stone. Tonight, you will light one lamp and lay one stone, and then tomorrow another, and then the next day another. This is how wisdom moves. This is how freedom returns. This is how the noise fades and the path appears, one steady step at a time. There is a moment when the day ends, but the spending continues in the mind. The body searches for comfort while the screen glows like a small sun, warm and persuasive. A tap here, a treat there, a subscription that promises to soothe a restless heart. It is not laziness. It is not a moral failure. It is the nervous system asking for relief after hours of carrying invisible weight. Under stress, the brain narrows to the most immediate exit, the quickest sugar for the soul, the smallest spark of control. This is how survival speaks. This is how money can slip through gentle hands without a single loud decision. Solomon describes a person without self-governance as a city without walls, exposed not because it is cursed, but because it is open to every whisper that passes through the gate. Feel that image and notice its compassion. The city is still a city. The foundations still stand. The streets still know their names. What is missing is not destiny. What is missing is protection. When desire sits on the throne, every message that promises relief becomes a visitor with a key to the gate. When principle returns to its seat, the keys change hands, and the gate keeps what nurtures while sending what drains back into the night. Paycheck to paycheck is more than math. It is an emotional climate. It is the ache of never arriving, the quiet embarrassment of choosing which bill gets oxygen, the soft grief of seeing effort dissolve before it has a chance to root. Emotional spending is not a love of things. It is a search for a feeling that says enough for this hour. The brain learns to associate that feeling with the small click of purchase, the soft arrival of a package, the anticipation that briefly distracts from the ache. There is tenderness in understanding this. There is also power. Naming the pattern loosens its hold because it brings the prefrontal light back to the scene. Awareness reopens the command center that stress had dimmed. Principle is not cold. Principle is warm in a different way. It is the warmth of a house with windows that close and doors that lock. The warmth of a kitchen that has what it needs because the list was made in peace and not in panic. Principle does not humiliate desire. It shepherds it. It asks desire to grow up, to serve a larger story, to seek comfort that truly heals rather than comfort that borrows from tomorrow. When principle governs, money begins to behave, not perfectly, not magically, but predictably, like a river returning to its banks after a season of flood. The relief is quieter, but it lasts. Imagine a rule of life for money as a gentle architecture rather than a set of punishments. It looks like clear categories with honest boundaries. It looks like an evening moment when the day receives a kind review instead of a harsh verdict. It looks like a purpose statement written in simple words that remind the heart why it works, why it saves, why it says not tonight to the appetite that is loud in the moment but silent when the bill arrives. A rule of life is not a cage. It is a circle of stones that mark sacred ground. In that circle, choices become easier because the path has edges, and the edges are loving. The body responds to boundaries the way it responds to steady breathing. Calm grows where predictability returns. Cortisol eases where chaos declines. The mind is freer to plan when it does not fear surprise ambushes from within. This is the quiet science behind ancient wisdom. Governance of desire changes the chemistry of a month. Gentle limits lower noise in the nervous system. Lower noise gives attention back to the tasks that actually build strength. Then strength returns, and the heart trusts itself a little more. Trust grows, and the gate stands stronger in the next storm. The cycle begins to reverse. The city remembers it has walls. Stone by stone is not a slogan. It is a rhythm the soul understands. A repaired hinge here, a patched crack there, one conversation about money that carries dignity instead of blame, one choice that keeps meaning close, even when the mood begs for a quick fix. This is how a life rebuilds, not with spectacle, with steady care. The watchman who walks the perimeter each evening is not a tyrant. The watchman is a guardian who loves what the walls protect. Peace within, purpose within, people within. There is an old lie that says you are broke because a faceless force decided it for you, because the world is rigged against you in a way that makes your choices irrelevant, because others hold the levers and you hold nothing. The world is not always fair. Systems can wound. Yet Solomon's vision restores agency without erasing reality. Fate is not the only author here. Discipline is a pen in your hand. Desire does not have to govern. Desire can learn to listen. When principle sits in the gatehouse, even an uneven world cannot steal the power to choose the next right boundary, the next right focus, the next right guardrail that keeps the heart steady in the storm. Think of the gates as living symbols. A budget category is a gate. A calendar block is a gate. A simple pause between urge and action is a gate. These are not punishments. They are the form that love takes when it wants you to keep what you work so hard to earn. They are the language of care translated into practice. They do not make life smaller. They make it safer so that life can grow larger without breaking. And when the whisper comes that says this is too slow and too small, remember the city. Remember the watchman. Remember the peace that comes from a perimeter that holds. The loudness of the urge is not proof of its wisdom. The quiet of the boundary is not proof of its weakness. The body often confuses loud with true. With practice, loud loses its power, and true begins to hum with a softer strength that does not need to shout. Where do my desires rule me more than my decisions? Hurry feels like hope when life is loud. The body aches for a fast rescue, and the mind imagines a single move that will erase the backlog of worry in one dramatic sweep. The heart hears the drum of urgency and believes the first path that promises to end the drumbeat. This is not foolishness. This is the nervous system reaching for silence, yet the silence bought by speed is thin and quickly torn. It soothes for an hour and leaves the next day noisier. The ancient wisdom we are learning does not shame that impulse. It understands it and then invites a better medicine, a slower medicine, a medicine that heals the roots instead of numbing the surface. There is an old line of counsel that treats haste like a mirage. Wealth chased in a sprint thins out. Wealth gathered with patient hands grows like grain in a storehouse. You can feel the difference in your body. Haste is hot in the chest and tight in the jaw. Patience is steady in the shoulders and clear behind the eyes. Haste lives on promises that need applause. Patience lives on small proofs that repeat quietly. Haste wants to win the lottery of a life. Patience wants to become the kind of person who can carry a harvest without spilling it. The world has become an amplifier for speed. Screens flash charts and headlines and deals that expire before you swallow your coffee. Stories are curated to highlight the outliers and call them normal. This trains the brain to crave the spike, the jump again, until stability starts to feel dull and wisdom starts to feel late. The older voice cuts through the hype with a kindness that does not bend. Diligence is not dullness, it is rhythm. It is compounding without fireworks. It is the kind of quiet growth that does not demand attention because it is building something that will not collapse when the wind changes. Imagine the ant in summertime, moving grain that looks like nothing from far away. There is no music, no audience, no instant before and after. Only motion that repeats, only small weights that add up to shelter. Across the field stands another scene, a ticket in a bright hand, a shout, a flash. A morning after that is emptier than the night before. These are two economies of the heart. One builds a storehouse, one burns through a promise. The storehouse looks slow until a cold season arrives. Then slow reveals itself as wise. There is a rhythm that wise people keep with their money. It begins before the spending. It begins where choice is still free of pressure. A small portion is given a home before it can wander. A predictable payment chips at the stone that has been on your back, lighter after each turn of the calendar. A regular contribution flows to the future, quiet as a stream that keeps the valley alive. None of this asks for applause. All of this asks for rhythm, and rhythm is kindness to a tired mind because it removes the daily debate that drains strength. The brain loves routines that reduce uncertainty. When the decision is already made in peaceful hours, the noisy hours have less power. Stress hormones begin to step back. Focus returns to the work that actually raises your value. Mood does not swing as wildly with every notification. This is the simple neuroscience beneath the proverb. Slow, steady actions write safety into the nervous system. Safety allows patience. Patience allows growth. Growth becomes visible over time, not in a headline, but in a life that no longer shakes at every gust. Speed promises a crown without a character to hold it. Wisdom grows a character that can wear a crown without bowing to it. That is why the path of patience feels like humility. It is humility. It is the acceptance that small today creates strong tomorrow, while the hunger for instant becomes a debt that collects with interest you cannot see. Humility says less spectacle and more substance, less rush and more roots, less gambling with the future and more tending of the ground that is already under your feet. If the voice inside says you are late, listen for the gentler truth underneath. You are not late to wisdom. Wisdom is always on time because it speaks in seasons. A seed planted now is not late for the harvest that belongs to its season. A routine begun now is not late for the stability that will ask for it later. The point is not to outrun anyone. The point is to become unshakable enough to keep walking when others stop. Let the image settle. An ant carrying what seems too small to matter. A storehouse filling without drama. A winter that does not frighten because the discipline of summer is resting in quiet bins. This is not a fantasy. It is not a miracle. It is the plain peace that comes from choosing a slow medicine again and again until the body trusts it more than it trusts the spike. What am I doing weekly that compounds, not combusts? There is a certain fatigue that no sleep can cure, the weariness that comes from pouring hour after hour into tasks that do not seem to change your future. The calendar is full, the days are long, and yet the ground does not feel more fertile. This is not because you lack heart. It is because the work beneath the work has not yet been claimed as land. When you start to see your craft as soil rather than punishment, something shifts in the chest. The breath steadies. The mind clears. You stop counting hours and start cultivating value. You begin to feel the difference between motion and progress, between effort that tries to prove worth and effort that quietly grows worth. Ancient wisdom paints a picture that is both beautiful and bracing. A person skilled in their work stands before kings, not because they chased thrones, but because usefulness draws doors open. This is not a promise of fame. It is a recognition of gravity. Excellence has weight. It settles into rooms where decisions are made, where trust is precious, where the stakes are real. Skill becomes a form of integrity. It tells the truth about who you are through what your hands can deliver. It tells the truth about what you love through the patience you are willing to give it. Modern life rewards noise in public and neglects practice in private. Algorithms prefer spectacle over substance. Stress pulls attention toward what is urgent and away from what is formative. The nervous system, tired of feeling powerless, reaches for the easiest task that gives the quickest hit of relief. The result is a day full of small satisfactions that do not add up to anything sturdy. When you return to practice, the brain begins to recalibrate. Focus extends. Anxiety lowers its voice. The chemistry shifts from scattered to steady as repetition strengthens neural pathways and makes skill feel natural instead of forced. You begin to trust your hands again. Think of your craft as an acre of ground that has been waiting for your steady presence. It wants preparation, it wants seed, it wants water and light, it wants pruning when growth comes in wild directions. There is nothing glamorous about any of this up close. The glamour lives in the harvest, and the harvest is just the final evidence of 1,000 quiet choices. You do not need to leap for meaning. You can grow meaning where you stand. The soil remembers good care. It remembers patient attention. It remembers hands that show up even when applause is not available. Growth becomes real when you combine a few simple elements and let them walk together. A useful skill that raises the value you offer. A tool that multiplies your output or quality. A way for people to see and feel your work without you having to shout. The combination does not need to be complex to be powerful. Useful, multiplied, visible. When those three words begin to orbit your craft, opportunities start to find you the way water finds lower ground, not all at once, not through spectacle, through the quiet magnetism of value that is clear and alive. The heart often resists this path because it believes excellence will require pace that breaks the rest of your life. What actually breaks you is reactive urgency without design. Practice can be gentle and still be exacting. You can move with kindness and still refuse to drift. Set a cadence that your nervous system can carry. Return to your acre at the same time each day or each week and give it your full attention for a span that feels honest. Consistency is love applied to time. Love teaches the mind and hands to meet in the same place until friction declines and flow appears. Standing before kings does not always look like a palace. It can look like a client who trusts you when it matters. It can look like a leader who asks your counsel because you see what others miss. It can look like a room where your name is spoken with respect when you are not there. The gate to such rooms opens for people who bring answers, not noise. Excellence is not a costume. It is a track record you can touch. It is the piece you carry into a meeting because you know your craft can hold the moment without breaking. There is a difference between more hours and more value. More hours often steals from your health, your relationships, your clarity. More value often gives those things back because it changes the exchange. When your usefulness deepens, you do not need to be everywhere to be essential. You do not need to be loud to be heard. You do not need to apologize for your rate because your results make sense of the number before your mouth says a word. This is not arrogance. This is stewardship. It honors the years you have already given and the years you have yet to live. From seed to root to orchard is the real timeline of a life that is becoming sturdy. The seed looks small and fragile. The root goes unseen and tests patience. The orchard takes shape slowly and then suddenly feels inevitable. Each stage has a grace of its own. Each stage asks for a different kind of attention. The seed needs protection. The root needs time. The orchard needs tending. Wisdom teaches you to bless the stage you are in and to meet it with the care it requires. When you do, options appear where there was only pressure, and provision appears where there was only scarcity. Perfectionism will try to hijack excellence by raising the bar beyond human measure. Do not let it. There is a holy kind of excellence that lives inside humility. It knows that mistakes are teachers and revisions are sacred. It knows that feedback is not a verdict on your worth, but a gift for your growth. It knows that mastery belongs to those who can stay curious longer than they can stay defensive. This spirit turns your craft into a quiet offering. It turns your work into prayer in motion. It turns ordinary tasks into a sanctuary for attention and care. Your body will tell you when you are working your land rather than escaping from it. There is a settled feeling in the spine, a clarity in the eyes, a calm in the breath. There is a sense of being held by the task rather than chased by it. Time does not vanish, it deepens. This is the sign that skill is becoming part of you. This is the sign that excellence is not an act you perform, but a way you move in the world. Which skill, if doubled, would double my usefulness? Freedom needs space to breathe. Without margin, even good income feels like a tight collar. The day compresses, the body stays braced, and the mind lives in a posture of flinch. When there is no room between you and the next demand, everything becomes urgent and nothing becomes wise. Ancient counsel has a gentle firmness here. The borrower becomes a servant, not because they lack dignity, but because their time and choices are borrowed as well. Servitude takes many shapes. It sounds like the card that must be paid before the groceries, the loan that decides when you can rest, the interest that eats the harvest before it reaches your table. This is not a moral scar. It is a mechanical truth. A life without margin sells its hours to survive its hours. Margin is not a mood. Margin is structure. It is the difference between standing on a ledge and standing on a porch. On the ledge, every breeze is a threat. On the porch, even a strong wind can be watched with a steady heart. When the soul senses that one surprise could topple the whole arrangement, it stays in silent panic. The nervous system releases alarms more often and for longer. Sleep restores less. Decisions become narrower and more reactive. When margin returns, the alarms soften. The body stops scanning every minute for danger. The mind gains range. Choice widens. Wisdom feels possible again. Debt often begins as a helper and matures into a handler. At first it feels like a bridge to get across a river. Then, without clear boundaries, the bridge becomes a toll road you cannot exit. The weight grows quiet at first, then heavy and constant. You notice it in your shoulders when you pause at a red light. You notice it in your breath when an unexpected expense enters the room. You notice it in your sense of self when you start to measure worth by what you owe and what you can cover. The older voice does not demonize every loan. It warns that dependency drains dignity. It warns that freedom shrinks when obligations multiply faster than wisdom can carry them. Picture liquidity as a well in the middle of a village. That well keeps fear from ruling the night. A bucket drawn in peace prevents a bucket begged in panic. When you have water within reach, storms lose some of their power to frighten. Liquidity is not glamour, it is quiet protection. It lets you meet an emergency with composure instead of chaos. It lets you make decisions from strength rather than from the edge of a cliff. It is not money worship, It is self-respect translated into planning. It is spiritual too, because a calm soul makes clearer vows and gives more honest gifts. Consider the granary before the storm. Grain does not appear because the sky was kind. Grain appears because a season of gathering was honored, one bin for the daily table, one for the day that comes with no warning, one for the future that needs planting and patience, one for the giving that keeps the heart human. These are not rigid categories. They are living rooms inside your life. They turn a fragile existence into an ordered home. They simplify decisions in loud weeks because the path already has edges. The edges hold you when your feelings try to run. Diversification is humility wearing wisdom. It admits that no field bears fruit every season. It spreads risk the way a gardener spreads seed across plots. Some plots will rest, some will flourish. The point is not to guess the lucky ground. The point is to remain standing when fortune shifts. Diversification is a spiritual posture as well. It confesses that you are not all-seeing and that the future is not yours to command. It seeks steadiness over spectacle. It seeks endurance over excitement. It seeks a harvest that can survive weather. There is a soft lie that says payments are all that matter, as long as they fit. That lie ignores the invisible cost that gathers in the background. Every payment buys a slice of your tomorrow, enough slices, and tomorrow has nothing left to sell except your peace. Ancient wisdom calls this servitude because it chains your choices. When you cannot make a kind decision for your health or your family because a payment owns the calendar, that is a chain. Chains can be broken, but they are easier to refuse before they harden. This is why margin feels like oxygen. It returns your say over your days. The science of safety echoes the scripture of stewardship. When people have a cushion, the nervous system stays within a calmer range. When people face every week with zero buffer, the body lives in survival mode. Survival mode is not evil, but it is expensive. It burns through energy and attention. It pushes you towards short horizon choices that relieve now and punish later. A modest reserve changes the chemistry of a month. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to think. It unlocks the part of the brain that can plan rather than react. Peace becomes productive. Wisdom becomes workable. Generosity belongs in this conversation because it refines the soul that holds the plan. Wealth without generosity hardens into fear. Giving loosens the grip of money on the heart and teaches trust without abandoning prudence. It is not about display, it is about alignment. When you allocate for others on purpose, you tell your soul that prosperity is a river and not a reservoir. That river flows better when the banks are strong. Margin builds the banks, generosity guides the flow. Together they keep you human in a culture that wants you to be a consumer first and a person second. The image of a yoke belongs here. Debt without discernment becomes a yoke that bows your neck and narrows your gaze. Removing the yoke is not rebellion, it is restoration. It raises the head and lengthens the view. It uncovers choices you could not see because your eyes were fixed on the ground in front of you. When the yoke loosens, hope finds room. When hope finds room, discipline feels lighter. When discipline feels lighter, you keep going long enough to see the weather change. Build your granaries in peace, not in panic. Sort your resources into living rooms that match your values. Let liquidity quiet the alarms. Let diversification keep you standing when seasons turn. Let generosity keep your heart from shrinking around your gains. Let the removal of unnecessary yokes become a song your body recognizes as freedom returning. If my income paused for 2 months, what would break first, and how could I guard it? There is a certain fog that rises when a choice carries weight. The room may be quiet, but inside the chest a storm forms. Urgency plays a drumbeat. Doubt answers back. In that noise, it is easy to mistake loud for true and speed for strength. Ancient counsel meets this moment with a soft lantern. Plans collapse where counsel is absent. Plans stand where wisdom is shared. This is not a loss of autonomy. This is a recovery of sight. The heart sees farther when it borrows the eyes of the trustworthy. Loneliness bends choices. It narrows horizons and pushes the mind toward decisions that soothe the ache of isolation, rather than serve the path of integrity. When you bring steady voices near, the horizon widens. Patterns that hid in plain sight step into view. What felt urgent becomes sized correctly. What felt glamorous loses its spell. Counsel is not a crowd shouting at your life. Counsel is a small circle of clear mirrors that reflect you back to yourself without distortion. Integrity is the quiet engine under wise decision. It is alignment between what is true inside and what is chosen outside. When integrity leads, you stop trading peace for applause. The nervous system loosens its grip because there is nothing to hide and nothing to explain away. Decisions become lighter even when they are difficult because you are not carrying the extra weight of pretending. Integrity is not rigidity, it is supple strength. It moves with reality and it refuses to bend around deceit. Timing is the art that sits beside truth. There is a season for planting and a season for harvest, a season for pruning and a season for rest. Act too soon and you bruise the fruit. Act too late, and you miss the window that only opens for a while. Wisdom reads weather. It watches the wind without worshipping it. It reads the soil without fearing it. It trusts that a door closed by season will return in season, and that rushing a door open only breaks the hinges. Many errors are born not from bad intentions, but from compressed timelines and overstimulated minds. When the heart is startled, it wants a quick exit. When the day has shouted for too long, silence feels like a threat. Wise people create a pause that protects them from their own adrenaline, a night that passes between impulse and commitment, a conversation that invites perspective, a breath that lets the body settle so the mind can see. In that pause, motives clarify, costs step forward, hidden risks speak up. The soul hears whether an opportunity fits who you are or only flatters what you fear. There is a rhythm in the way seasoned people decide. They begin by naming the real motive because a disguised fear will always choose poorly. They hold the downside in their hands until it is not a stranger. They check the fit with the larger season of life, not just the mood of the week. They invite trusted voices to edit the plan, not to control it, but to strengthen it. Then, when the piece under the ribs agrees with the counsel at the table, and the present season can carry the weight, they move without drama. This rhythm is not superstition. It is stewardship of attention, character, and time. Trusted voices form a kind of harbor. One understands money and reads the math with compassion. One understands vocation and recognizes where your usefulness will be honored, not drained. One understands character and guards the person you are becoming while you build what you are building. These voices do not live to impress you. They live to protect the truth in you. Their presence quiets the inner performer and awakens the inner guardian. Their words may be few, but their weight is real. Discernment grows where humility is welcome. Pride seeks agreements and calls them counsel. Humility seeks truth and calls it a gift even when it stings. Pride rushes to announce. Humility moves calmly and lets the work speak. Pride is allergic to the word not now. Humility understands that not now can be the most prosperous answer in the long run. This humility does not shrink you, it steadies you. It frees you to pass on glitter that would have cost you gold. There is a sweetness in decisions made without the tremor of deceit. The body knows. Sleep deepens. Breath smooths. Energy returns. A yes that honors integrity restores strength. A no that honors timing preserves future yeses that matter more. With each aligned decision, trust in yourself increases. That trust becomes a quiet power. You stop needing the crowd to agree because you have already agreed with your own conscience and with the counsel that helps keep that conscience clear. Bring to mind the compass and the map and the crew. The compass is integrity, always pointing to true north. The map is timing, the seasons drawn in lines that make sense of the terrain. The crew is counsel, steady hands and clear eyes when the water turns. With these three together, storms become navigable, not because they grow weaker, but because you grow wiser. Whose wisdom edits my next big decision, and what is the right season to act? Morning settles over a quiet city. Light finds the edges of old stone and rests on the places where the wall has thinned. Below those stones, a single ant carries a kernel that looks like nothing from a distance. The city does not notice the ant, and the ant does not wait for the city. One carries grain, one carries a history of gates that were once strong and watchmen who once sang at night. Both are true at the same time, small strength moving in the dust, great strength needing repair. Years of easy weather taught the city to trust the breeze. Invitations passed through open gates. Comfort walked in with soft feet. Desire wore a friendly face. Old hinges rusted because no one checked them at dusk. The wall did not fall in a single day. It loosened in quiet seasons and called it peace. Stones sagged and called it style. Cracks widened and called it character. Meanwhile, the ant learned a different kind of peace. Slow work in clear air. Motion repeated until instinct formed. The storehouse grew by increments smaller than a whisper. A wind rose one afternoon. Nothing dramatic at first. It began as a mood and then gathered into weather. The city felt it in the windows and wondered if it would pass. A few merchants fastened their shutters. A few neighbors looked toward the gate and then back at their errands. By evening, the wind was a voice. By night, it was an argument. The gap in the wall that looked like a painting became a path. The open gate became an invitation written in haste. What felt harmless now felt expensive, not just in money, in attention, in energy, in trust. Across the field, the ant entered the storehouse. Grain waited in its quiet towers. No trumpet, no story for children, only the steady relief of provision. Winter is never as loud when the bins are not empty. Pressure is never as humiliating when a plan has been trusted in ordinary days. The ant does not preach. Its testimony is the weight of its own small body pushing what it can push, returning with what it can carry, repeating what works until it builds a kind of weather inside its own life. The city remembers the day the walls went up. There was singing. There was a sense of safety. Families slept and knew the night could not wander in without asking. That memory returns as the storm bears down. The elders gather where the wall has thinned. They place one stone and then another. They do not argue with the wind. They work with the weight of the rock, the patience of mortar setting, the knowledge that a single evening cannot replace years. Yet they also know that one evening can begin a repair. The work warms their hands. The rhythm steadies their breath. The city becomes a student of its own edges. In the nervous system, there is a city too. There are gates that decide what gets attention, and walls that determine how much the alarms are allowed to shout. Repetition lays down pathways in the brain, like footsteps wear paths into the earth. What is practiced becomes easier to practice again. A purchase for comfort becomes a groove. A pause for perspective becomes a groove. A frantic check of numbers becomes a groove. A calm review after dinner becomes a groove. The body is not against you. It is a city that can be patrolled with love and guided with rhythms that make peace more likely than panic. There is a softer story that does not make headlines. It is the tale of households that quietly strengthened their gates and filled their small bins while no one was watching. They were not wealthier at first. They were simply steady. When a harder season arrived, they did not become immune to pain, but they were not undone by it. The storm did not define them. The preparation did. This is not a romance with austerity. It is a romance with wisdom. It is the romance of a plan that fits a human heart and a human week. The ant teaches that small is not weak when it is repeated. The wall teaches that strong is not loud when it is tended. Together, they become a parable, an agreement between inner life and outer life. The storehouse is the quiet yes to your future. The wall is the quiet no to what drains you. Both protect the center. Both honor the work that brought you here. Both take time. Both return that time with interest that looks like calm and sounds like laughter that is not forced. Night falls and the storm passes. The city holds, not perfectly. There are leaks to patch and stories to tell, yet the watchmen sing again because the perimeter holds. The ant returns to its path in the morning because the store is still not full. Neither thinks in spectacle. Both think in seasons. Both understand that security is a kind of love that moves slowly and shows up every day. Let the image settle. The small worker beneath the sun, the patient mason at the wall. The first protects the table, the second protects the town. Grain and stone, boundary and provision, rhythm inside the body and structure outside the body. When these two walk together, winter becomes a teacher instead of a terror, and wisdom becomes a way rather than a slogan. There is a quiet hour when the day loosens its grip and the room finally breathes. In that space, a simple ritual can meet you without pressure and without performance. It does not strain, it does not impress. It gathers the threads of the day and weaves them into a calmer pattern for the next. The body understands this rhythm because repetition tells the nervous system that life is guided, not chased. The heart understands it because gentle order is a form of love. The mind understands it because clarity arrives more easily when noise is not in charge. Gate check is the first movement of this evening ritual. Picture the city you carry within, with gates that welcome what nourishes and close to what drains. Gate check is a soft review of one boundary, not a tribunal, not a spreadsheet in disguise, simply an honest look at one place where energy tends to leak. A category that often overruns its banks, a window of time that invites impulse more than wisdom, a habit that pretends to be comfort and then leaves a bruise in the morning. Naming one gate brings the prefrontal light back to the perimeter. The body feels safer when a watchman is present. Calm grows where attention returns with kindness. Ant step is the second movement. Think of a single action small enough to complete in an ordinary day and meaningful enough to compound across many days. This is not a grand gesture. This is the kernel on the shoulder of a steady worker, a transfer set to move without debate, a task that grows a skill by a visible sliver, a preparation that makes tomorrow easier to begin. The nervous system relaxes when it trusts that forward motion will not require a surge of adrenaline. Momentum built in small pieces reduces the craving for spikes. Peace replaces drama and stillness becomes productive again. Granary build is the third movement. Imagine the central well of a village and the bins that protect a household from panic. Granary build is a quiet allocation towards safety that asks for dignity before it asks for display. It is the difference between hoping a storm will pass and knowing the lamps are filled. The soul steadies when provision is no longer a rumor. Even a modest reserve changes the chemistry of a month. Alarms fire less often, sleep deepens, decisions regain range, strength that would have been spent on worry returns to the tasks that create value and to the people who are your true wealth. Counsel compass is the final movement. Wisdom multiplies in good company, and timing clarifies when honest mirrors are near. Counsel compass is a single question set aside for a trusted voice, carried into the week like a lantern. It is a space where motives can be seen without shame and blind spots can be named without fear. Over time, this practice trains the inner weather to settle before commitments are made. The body learns that a pause is not danger. The mind learns that perspective is not delay. The heart learns that saying not yet can be as faithful as saying yes. Together, these movements create a circle that closes the day with grace. Gate check protects, ant step advances, granary build preserves, counsel compass aligns. The order is gentle and the tone is humane. No bravado, no hidden scolding, only a return to governance that lifts the head rather than bows the neck. Only a return to the kind of stewardship that keeps you human while you become strong. Repetition writes this pattern into muscle and memory until it feels natural to move with it, until wisdom is not a distant voice, but a familiar cadence that your whole being recognizes. There will be evenings when the ritual feels small and the larger story feels heavy. That is when its medicine is most faithful. Small is not weakness when it is repeated. Quiet is not absence when it is aligned. Each pass through this circle strengthens the walls and fills the bins. Each pass makes it easier to meet opportunity without panic and to meet pressure without self-betrayal. The next season will arrive with its own mix of sun and weather. When it does, This practice will have already given you shade and shelter. If wisdom governed tonight in one simple movement, which movement would bring the most peace to your next day? The room is quiet now. The body knows the path it has walked. Walls and gates. Slow medicine, useful work that grows into worth, margin that gives breath to choice, counsel that steadies timing and keeps the soul honest. These are not slogans. They are ways of moving through a loud world with an anchored heart. If you listen closely, you can hear the cadence settling inside you, a softer pulse, a steadier step, a kind of peace that does not depend on the weather. You have seen how small becomes strong when it returns each day. You have felt how clarity returns when shame is dismissed and dignity is invited back to the table. You have watched the ant carry what it can carry, and you have watched the wall learn to hold again. The river of your life runs clearer when boundaries guide its banks. The storehouse of your life grows fuller when patience fills it grain by grain. Each image is a handle you can hold when the day tries to knock the truth from your hands. There is a goodness in knowing that wisdom does not rush you. It walks beside you. It keeps pace with breath. It holds both the ache of the present and the promise of a future that does not crush you to reach it. Prosperity begins as inner governance and grows outward into choices that honor your health, your people, your purpose. Wealth without wisdom is a weight. Wisdom with enough provision is a blessing that expands without breaking the vessel that holds it. Let the closing be simple and sincere. Gratitude for the steps already taken. Respect for the road still ahead. Confidence not in luck, but in the alignment that has begun to form. When the next urge arrives dressed as rescue, you will remember the gate. When the next loud shortcut shouts from the crowd, you will remember the ant. When the next long day tempts you to trade value for noise, you will remember the field that becomes an orchard. When fear tries to fasten a yoke around your neck, you will remember the granary that is growing. When the crossroads appears, you will remember the compass and the crew. If wisdom governed your next 30 days, what would change first?